This is an exciting time in Scotland's story, and understanding our past will help us determine our future. And when Scotland's voice is heard, it charts the way forward. This is Scotland Speaks with Salmond. Good morning and welcome to a very special edition of Scotland Speaks with Salmond. We're here at the Charterist Centre in Edinburgh, where the Alapa Party are holding a special national council for the national movement, for the Yes movement as a whole, to chart forward the way to independence. There's going to be a huge attendance today, and we'll take plenty of interviews from those who come along to have their view. And at the end of it, we'll have the Holy Grail, the way forward to independence. And now to Tasmina, who's going to tell us a bit more about what else is in today's show.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. And here I am in the hall waiting for people to come in and listen to what our speakers have to say at today's public meeting at the Charterist Centre in Edinburgh. And this is all about the Yes path to independence. And we'll be hearing from Kenny McCaskill MP, Neil Hanvey MP, Regan MSP, of course Alex Salmond himself in the guise of leader of the Alba Party, and also from the independent MP of Independent Mind, Angus Brendan McNeill of Naheelan and Year. So as people are coming in, we're now going to cut to hear what some of our speakers had to say.
Well, thank you. Well, welcome everyone. I'm going to start with just a little bit of history, just to recap and dwell on something that Taz said there. Firstly, the history of this meeting. As many of you will remember, after the ill-fated sally to the Supreme Court, we had a number of meetings in Perth and here in this hall with the wider Yes movement to talk about the way forward. And coming out of the meeting in Perth and the meeting here almost exactly 1 year ago, there was a general feeling across the Yes movement that a way should attempt to be found to unite the whole movement behind a common strategy, a common cause, and that would provide the best opportunity for the upcoming general election to take matters forward. There was a feeling that the idea of seeking a mandate directly at a general election was a good idea. It was probably the only course, given that the referendum route had been shut off. But it should be done as a united movement. So we took that forward from this meeting. Many of you were at the Glasgow Yes rally, where on the same day as the coronation, those of us who went to the better party in Scotland will remember that at that rally, it was tearing down with rain, but also I said, look, the best way to address this would be to have in each constituency one Scotland United candidate standing on a direct mandate to negotiate Scottish independence. And that was greeted with some enthusiasm by the crowd that day. I've got no doubt that that position was the majority position across the Yes movement. I've got no doubt, incidentally, it would have been the majority and favoured position of Scottish National Party members and activists. However, unfortunately, it wasn't the favoured position of the Scottish National Party leadership. Those of us from Alapa will remember at the spring conference in Inverness, I wrote directly to Humza. I wrote again to Humza and to Patrick Harvey. I wasn't quite sure whether to include Patrick in the wider national movement or no, but nonetheless I did. And I didn't get a reply from either. I spoke to the standards of education in Scotland have fallen so low. I spoke to Humza at Winnie Ewing's memorial service in Inverness. I suggested it might be a good idea to have a chat, and he seemed very favourable. He said, yes, yes, he said. But nothing, unfortunately, was forthcoming, and I got the message from his private office that he didn't want to see me. I was going to try WhatsApps, but I didn't think they would get through.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here to see all of you today. Thanks for coming. 2014, if we cast our minds back to that, was that year of hope, that sense of aspiration and optimism. And as 2024, a decade later, begins, it feels like, looking around, certainly at the international situation, some of the things that are going on in Scotland, like it's beginning as a year of doom and gloom. But I don't think it has to be like that at all. We know that independence, the movement, is still strong. I think that the fact that there's so many people in this room today is testament to that. We know that support for independence is still high. There was a poll out this week, I believe. Polling is on 52%. Independence, in my view, is more important than ever. But I think we're at a crucial moment now. I think the next year or two, we could be looking at securing independence for Scotland, but if we don't, and we don't have a credible strategy for that, I think it could be banished to the back burner for another decade or so, and we can't have that. So we know that Westminster will block Scotland's desire for another independence referendum. We know that because we've been watching that strategy play out in real time over the last 10 years. So it's time to admit, and if Hamza is still winging it, he might want to admit to himself that it's time now to look at some other options, rather than just to pursue that failed strategy for another few years. We need something that's going to get this moving, get us back on track towards independence. So Neil has obviously spoken about his bill that he put forward in Westminster, and it was predictably voted down. We knew it would be, but it showed us two things. So firstly, it told us something we already know. So we know that we cannot progress independence at Westminster. We know that's not going to happen. So we need a strategy that takes Westminster out of the process. We need to stop begging London for things from Scotland.
It's simply not good enough for us to come back to Scotland without that ability to begin negotiations and shout at the sky. That will not achieve Scottish independence. Our place, unfortunately, has to be there until the times that Kenny, myself and Angus have enough of a cohort of people with the courage to bring independence home. So until such times, we will have to endure Westminster. But we must build the momentum and the capacity to drive the message home and to get that cohort of members of Parliament with the guts and gumption to go down, bang their fists on the table and say we're off.
This is an abomination. No more. We can't do any worse than under them. We don't want led into World War III because, by all means, let me tell you, I'm at Westminster. There are people that want World War III. They're preparing for it. And how you allow your retiring general to go out talking about conscription is utterly disgraceful. So as I say, this is a time where the Yes movement has to come together. Not the tame Yes movement, not the Yes movement that goes onto social media to say how wonderful the SNP government is and how everything in the media is wrong and how it's all, yes, a lot of the media is wrong, but a lot of the failures are correct. And until we acknowledge that, we can't go forward. But we've got to get the message out to the people of Scotland that we don't need to live this way. And one of the first things you've got to do is you've got to draw a line in the sand. And you've got to say, it's not going any further. We're not going into needless wars. We're not bombing people who are the poorest folk in the planet. And we're not seeing our factories, our refineries and our shipyards closed, and the rights to work for our youngsters taken away, for those who weren't at the Alba meeting in the morning. The average age of a Scottish worker in Ferguson Marine is 56. 56. Yet what's the youth unemployment rate in Inverclyde? It will be hundreds or thousands. So this is not just for the men and women in work. This is for the rights of future generations in Scotland, because Grangemouth no more does result in emigration, because kids will say, if there's no work in Grangemouth, then I'll just have to leave. And that's why there has to come a time where we make a stand. The SNP and the Greens have forfeited that. The Tame Yes movement has gone along with it, and it's up to us in Alba and other movements to say no more. We are going to fight back to make sure that we get a safer world and that we get the Scotland that we're entitled to expect for our people, for our children and future generations.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Tapoli Fisker man, thanks for the big falcha there. To a Scotland United ally, I think I'm well termed myself here, but I've learned something new today about Scottish politics. There's a group of people called the Marshmallow Brigade. Now, I don't know about you, but I quite like marshmallows, so can somebody tell me a bit more about the Marshmallow Brigade, please? Just to the point of English independence, and I do my bit every 23rd of April for English independence. I fly the St George's Cross from my office in Stornoway to thank the many English people who have come to the islands who voted for me. Also to encourage our neighbours indeed to become independent, as the gentleman suggested. And remember, they will be our #1 trading partner. And it gives lie to the idea that you have to be in a union with your #1 trading partner. Ireland is not in a union with its #1 trading partner. Canada is not in a union with its #1 trading partner. So the next time we hear a minister from the Scottish office say you have to be in a union because they're your #1 trading partner, perhaps send them a bag of marshmallows. I'm not sure. I just want to say, I'm here speaking to Alapa today, but this is not exclusive. My agent, Chris McElhenney, would for a small fee, tout me to the SNP to speak as well. Mind you, before they expelled me, they didn't let me speak for 5 years. So I'm not holding my breath, and I don't think my agent's going to get much money at all, because the chance of being hired is probably very little. But joking aside, I mean, we should be working together in this movement. We're a country of 5 million souls. We've got important things to get done. Young Hamza is thinking that Keir Starmer should be responding to his letter. And if he wants that courtesy, perhaps he should start the courtesy himself and respond to the former First Minister, the one who delivered an independence referendum and who moved the dial who moved the dial on independence like no other leader in Scotland has done. Incidentally, I wrote to him as well, but I don't think if Alex not getting a response, the chance of me getting a response is lesser. But I asked him not to split the independent vote in the Hailing Year, the independence vote in the Hailing Year. He's trying to do that, but friends, he won't succeed. He won't succeed at all.
But underlying everything there is a political strategy and political will. Now that is what Alapa now have, thanks to the combination that Ash Regan has outlined. The combination of the bill in the Parliament, the combination of seeking a mandate from the people at the election, the exercise of the sovereignty that the gentleman at the back was talking about, and the will to then implement it. I despair often. People say, what can we do? I'm not talking about the folk, I'm talking about the parliamentarians. Oh, we can do that. We're not allowed to do that. We can't do that because they won't let us. I particularly loved the point about, when I was asked by a journalist, did Westminster insist on me being chaperoned when I met other world leaders? I just replied, I said, I think Mr. Cameron at the time would have thought it inadvisable to try and insist that I'd be chaperoned when I was campaigning for independence. That would be ridiculous. You have to, if you're going to be independent, you've got to act like you're independent. You've got to have the confidence, and you've got to lead people to have that confidence. The route ahead for us is certain. The only question is the pace. And the more people are behind us, the more that Ash Regan's bill gets support, the more people that join, the more constituencies we can fight, then the faster this pace will be. Right now, I can promise, as Alapa Party leader, at the next Scottish elections, every person in Scotland will have an Alapa candidate to vote for a mandate for independence, and hopefully to push through Ash's bill through the Scottish Parliament to get that combination. I would like to do it sooner. And we'll do it sooner if people mobilise behind us. We've got the strategy, we've got the will, we need the support. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. Now, you heard the main speakers or some snippets of the speeches while in action. Well, let's hear what they had to say when they spoke to Alex after the event.
Ash Regan, Member of the Scottish Parliament for Edinburgh Eastern. What did you think of this meeting today in Edinburgh?
I think it was a great idea to get together members of parties that are pro-independence and people that are not in a party who are interested in how we get to independence to come together and to listen to the strategy that Alba is putting forward at the moment. So we obviously have our election strategy, which is where you use elections for the people of Scotland to express a mandate to begin negotiations. But on top of that, I've put forward a proposal for a bill to the Scottish Parliament, and that is a bill to extend the powers of the Scottish Parliament. So the Scottish Parliament would be responsible for negotiating and legislating for Scottish independence. And we actually did a poll on that this week. So the poll results came out, and it's actually supported by over nearly 58% of the Scottish public support that idea. So I need to get some support from colleagues in the Scottish Parliament.
You asked the meeting here to write to the...
Absolutely, yeah.
So you think it'll make a difference if people watching this show or people at the meeting today, they say to them, look, this is supported by the people, you should support it as well.
Absolutely. So I would love to get as much support as possible for this. I would love people to go and speak to their MSPs because I need that support from other members. But I think Neil Hanvey had a bill. He's an MP at Westminster, and he had his bill recently in Westminster. And we did learn some things from that, and we learned that the SNP could be relied upon to support an ALBA initiative in Parliament. So I think that sets a precedent there.
If the pressure is great enough.
I think if there is some interest in it. So I think the precedent's there, and let's hope that that continues and I get SNP support for the bill at Holyrood.
Ash Regan, thank you so much for joining me on Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.
Thank you.
Neil Hanvey, Member of Parliament for Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath. A few seconds ago, Ash Regan said to me that although your bill on self-determination was defeated at Westminster, it still served a purpose. How's that?
Well, I mean, it's quite interesting. 2 goes, but eventually we got a vote on the floor of the House. And the following day, I think the Liberal Unionist MP, Christine Jardine, looked rather crestfallen when I explained to her that that was actually part of the plan, and we really needed to get that demonstration from Westminster.
So your bill was self-determination for Scotland, which everybody's meant to accept.
That's right.
For a nation. And your bill was voted down by English Tory MPs and Labour ones.
And the Labour Party, it transpires, as explained to me in the lobby, were whipped to vote against Scotland's self-determination. But the impact really goes far beyond that. Although I tried to encourage SNP MPs, some who did support it, but I encourage, for example, Stephen Flynn, Peter Grant, to support the face of the bill, to sign the face of the bill. They declined to do so, and one of their MPs said to me, well, we've changed our position on that. But what the vote demonstrated was, even all of that resistance, they were allowed to be pushed into line to vote in support of Scotland's right for self-determination.
So your bill, if you like, flushed out Westminster last-ditchers against Scotland, but also pushed the SNP into voting for something that hitherto they hadn't shown much enthusiasm for.
Well, it maybe encouraged them back towards that national cause of self-determination that we were all elected to deliver on.
And so say all of us. Neil Handy, thank you so much for joining me
Pleasure,
on
Alex.
Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond. So Angus Brendan McNeill, the Member of Parliament for Nahealing and Yea.
Absolutely, yes.
I understand you interrupted a game of shinty today to come to this big meeting. Is that true?
Yeah, we were playing in the Jack Asher Sixes in Yoker in Glasgow today, and the team almost qualified out of their group. They were just a few points away, and I'm now claiming that had I remained and not come to speak in Edinburgh, the team might have gone on to greater things and might even have won the Glasgow University Veterans.
So you sacrificed the laurels of shinty to come and speak for independence.
I did say if they won, I would dash back for the final and the glory.
But you got a big reception today. That must be quite encouraging for you as you go into an election as an independent nationalist.
Of course, I mean, in a democracy where in demos the people are important, when the people show support and affection, it's very supportive. And I hope it's the same at home because I am the independent voice, I'm on their side. I'll always stand up for them as I'll do for people here as well. So yeah, it's a good way to go forward.
And you must be pleased that, as a pioneer of the argument, look, take this to the people for an electoral mandate. Now a referendum has been denied. You must be pleased to see Alapa pick up the cudgels.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a long time trying to encourage the SNP that independence was a good idea, but even more than that, actually to do something about it. I've described the years we have at the moment as the limbo years, going up probably to the 2026 election. The SNP could have an unscheduled election at Holyrood and put the independence on that ballot. They could do what Ash Regan is doing and put the independence on that ballot. They're choosing to do neither, while all around them everything is burning. And I think it is a real loss of years and a wasted time that the SNP are presiding over now. Nothing is changing, and they're the ones with the power. If Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer blocked the referendum route, they shouldn't be blocking other routes. So it's an axis. We've got Sunak and Starmer on the other, and we've got Yousaf on the other side, and that's blocking. That is the block to independence at the moment, and it's tragic to say that, but it's the truth.
Well, hopefully we can unlock that door, Angus Brendan McNeill, and thank you so much for joining me in Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.
A great pleasure, thank you.
Kenny McCaskill, Member of Parliament for East Lothian. We've seen a few meetings politically in our time campaigning together. What was it about this meeting that led you to believe that the Alapa engine on independence is sparking into life?
Well, I think it was the variety in the breadth. I mean, we obviously had a meeting this morning that was for Alba members only, and this afternoon that was significantly bigger, was much wider, because there's many in the Yes movement who are frustrated about the lack of action and the lack of leadership. And I think what we're providing in Alba is the leadership, and what we're trying to galvanise amongst the broader, wider Yes movement is that activity.
And you think this ball is rolling the way that in years gone by, the poll tax campaign, galvanised Scottish opinion. There's no shortage of issues in Scottish society right now.
Well, these are worrying times. I think people are beginning to realise we've got to draw a line in the sand. We can't wait on a cunning plan. We can't wait on some salvation from the courts. What we've got to do is to defend the interests of our people, of our economy, of our society, and indeed of our world, which has now become a very frightening place with a race towards war.
Well, you made that point, and I was interested. I was watching people's faces as you were making it, and they were transfixed by the points you made. What is your real fears about the international situation just now?
Well, it's an escalation. We've already seen that, the attacks upon the Houthi bases. Nobody's an admirer of the Houthis. I've no doubt they're not pleasant people. But this is being used in terms of airstrikes by the USA, not simply on Yemen. There's airstrikes upon Iraq. There's attacks elsewhere. So this is a deeply worrying time, and the debate in Parliament sees a continuum between Iran to Russia and almost to China. This is a Dr. Strangelove type position that basically anticipates almost what we lived through in the 1980s of those who perceived nuclear war and perceived it as winnable.
Which is why perhaps that Scotland should with some urgency address its position within the international community.
Absolutely. Scotland's got to be able to stand up for itself, to speak out for the wrong that's happening in Gaza. We only have to compare and contrast the actions of Ireland and the actions of the UK. Ireland at one stage was on the Security Council of the United Nations. The United Kingdom is there. They failed to move for a ceasefire. The learned and wonderful President of Ireland speaks out not simply for
President Higgins.
President Higgins. Not simply does he speak out for a ceasefire. He speaks out for justice for the Palestinian people that I think everybody in Scotland recognise also has to be provided for. And yet we've got a government that is supine to Israel and indeed to America. So you have to be an independent nation. We have to be independent so that we don't become simply the United States offshore battle carrier. I received a communication from the UK Defence. There are 14,000 American servicemen in the UK, mostly in England, almost all in USAF bases. And I saw a newspaper article, The Telegraph, so it must have some basis, about American nuclear weapons coming back into the UK. They'll be airborne. These are dangerous times, and that's why Scotland has to be able to go its own way as the Republic of Ireland does.
Kenny, we know you just read The Telegraph to see what the enemy are thinking, but thank you so much for joining me on Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.
Thank you.
Coming up after the break, we will turn to your points of view and the points of view of some people who are watching today's meeting. We'll see you then. Welcome back to Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond from our new venue for this week at the Charters Centre in Edinburgh. And we're going to be hearing from some of the attendees at the Yes Path to Independence to hear what they had to say. And also, we'll be hearing your comments and points of view on our show last week on Burns the Radical. And we are still in Burns season after all, and you had plenty to say about it. But first, over to some of the people who attended the Path to Independence.
Gladys, welcome to Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
Now, Gladys, I know you're a Glaswegian, so you've come all the way through to Edinburgh for a meeting.
Yes.
So tell me, this is your first ALPA meeting. Were you pleased or were you disappointed?
This is my first ALPA meeting, and I came with one of the members. I'm really pleased and with how the meeting went on, and it was a great meeting.
And was it what you were expecting, when you were coming along to this meeting?
Yeah, I was expecting to know more about ALPA and what it stands for. And yes, I've come in and I listened to all what you had to say, and I'm confident that this is the party to go for.
So you'll be back at other meetings?
Yes, of course, I will, definitely.
Well, that's great to hear. Gladys, thank you so much for joining me on Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Abdul Majid, you've been an independence campaigner since 19 Oatcake, but you're now through at this meeting in Edinburgh as a member of the ALPA executive. Now, is this the sort of meeting we should be having?
I think it's very, very great meeting, coming through from the Glasgow, and don't expecting, that much big meeting, and I think it's very, very great. Many people coming all over the Scotland, and plus they're coming from Glasgow, as many people, African and Asian as well. And I think this is the great meetings, and I feel, our party, ALPA party, go day by day, forward, and people keep coming and interesting in the parties, they join the parties.
Well, so say all of us. Abdul Majid, thank you so much for joining me on Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.
Thank you.
And now it's time for You Speak and your tweets and messages from last week's show. First tweet is from Donald referring to Bishop Wishart, who of course was Alex's hidden hero last week, and he says, "Thanks given gladly to Bishop Robert Wishart." Watch says, "Very interesting hearing from Alex Neil about the influence of Robert Burns' writings on Andrew Carnegie and Abraham Lincoln's household. Also about Bishop Wishart's unwavering support for the cause of independence from Alex Salmond." Indie Boy says, "Great episode. I think it's underestimated how much influence Rabbi Burns had and has over the world. Not just his poetry, but his politics and beliefs too. I agree with both Alexes that pro-independence parties should back Ash Regan's bill. It would be a big step towards independence." And finally, Felix says, "A Fond Kiss is the greatest love song ever written." Yes, Felix, I most certainly agree.
A long time ago, I think in my first stint as leader of the Scottish National Party back in the early 1990s, the SNP weren't doing particularly well. They were coming up to a general election. We didn't seem to have much of a campaign going. And I remember a journalist coming along to a meeting of the SNP National Council, a very wise journalist, and what he wrote was that he thought that the famed SNP engine was spluttering into life. And he was right. Within about 3 months, we'd doubled our position in the opinion polls and had a rip-roaring, independence-oriented campaign for the 1992 election. I got that feeling today at the Charterist Hall in Edinburgh, except this time, of course, it's the ALPA engine which is coming into life. And the reason is that ALPA have a strategy for getting this country to Scottish independence. And at a time where 52% of the population believe in independence, but the government of Scotland don't seem to have a clue as to how to get there, then of course it's at high premium that ALPA have a strategy for saying every election should be a mandate for independence, and Ash Regan has a bill in the Scottish Parliament to get the assent of the people to back the idea that Scotland should decide on independence. And what's crucial about the ALPA strategy is this. Both these things, both the Ash Regan bill in the Scottish Parliament, both looking for the assent of the people to an independence mandate campaign, are things which are born in Scotland. They take Scotland's future into Scotland's hands. And that's why I think the Alapa engine is indeed springing into life, and we have found a winning combination for Scotland.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. And that brings us to the end of today's show, filmed here at the Charters Centre in Edinburgh. I think you can see that the Yes movement is in fine form, fine fettle and raring to go. We just need the campaign to take us to independence. Thank you very much indeed for watching Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond. We look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place. And that is, of course, at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And before Alex prompts me, yes, for the football. We shall see you then on every social media channel going. We look forward to it. Thank you so much. Take care. And until then, goodbye.
This is an exciting time in Scotland's story, and understanding our past will help us determine our future. And when Scotland's voice is heard, it charts the way forward. This is Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.